When you walk into one of those incredibly elaborate, like high-end haunted house attractions in October, there is this very specific, almost sacred social contract you're signing at the door.
Oh, absolutely. You're basically signing away your right to logic for an hour.
Right. Think about it. You step into the dark. The fog machine is just pumping out that sweet-smelling, slightly chemical smoke.
Yeah, the classic Halloween store smell.
Exactly. And the strobe lights are flashing at just the right frequency to totally disorient your depth perception. And in that moment, you are actively, willingly giving the environment permission to terrify you.
You're paying for it.
Yeah.
You want the guy in the terrifying silicone mask to jump out from behind the fake brick wall.
You do. You are handing over your money specifically for the illusion of danger. Like, you want to feel like you are in absolute peril, even though you know you're completely safe.
Right. I mean, it is a highly orchestrated, incredibly delicate manipulation of your physical senses. You are essentially agreeing to temporarily suspend your disbelief. You're letting your primal fight-or-flight instincts just take the wheel, even though the logical, rational part of your brain knows perfectly well that the walls are made of painted plywood.
Yeah, and the blood is just like, corn syrup.
Exactly. And the terrifying monster chasing you with a chainsaw is just a theater student who is, trying to pay for their weekend groceries.
So true. But you suppress that logical side because the adrenaline rush of the illusion is exactly what you are there to experience.
That's the whole point of the transaction.
Right. But I want you to imagine a slightly different scenario for a second. You are walking through that dark, terrifying hallway.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The fog is thick. The creepy ambient music swells. The monster jumps out from the shadows, raises a massive fake machete above his head. The strobe light catches the plastic blade, and then...
And then what?
And then he completely trips over his own untied shoelaces. Just funts plants right onto the floor. He drops the machete, lets out this heavy, exasperated sigh, rips off the rubber mask, looks right at you, and just starts bitterly complaining.
Like out of character.
Totally out of character. Just complaining about how the lighting designer completely missed their cue and ruined his big dramatic moment.
Well, I mean, the illusion is completely irreparably shattered at that point.
Exactly. The fear just evaporates instantly.
Yeah, you can't put the genie back in the bottle once you see the monster, like, checking their watch or complaining about the lighting.
But see, the fear evaporates, sure, but something else immediately takes its place.
Laughter.
Right. Suddenly, you aren't terrified of the haunted house anymore. You are looking squarely at the actual mechanics of the haunted house. You see the strings holding the puppets.
You see the neon theatrical tape on the floor.
Exactly. And ironically, instead of running away screaming, you are probably standing there laughing your head off at the sheer absurdity of the whole production.
Because the tension has nowhere else to go.
Bingo. And that exact moment, that intentional, aggressive breaking of the terrifying illusion to show you the ridiculous, clunky machinery operating underneath, that is exactly what we are plunging into on today's deep dive.
And honestly, it is a fascinating, incredibly timely landscape to explore right now.
It really is. So for everyone listening, today we are digging into some amazing coverage from the Movie Maniac Podcast crew. We're looking at their excerpts regarding a highly anticipated and frankly shocking cinematic return.
Yeah, the newly dropped final trailer for Scary Movie 6.
Hitting theaters on June 12th. But let me set the expectations for you right now. Our mission today isn't just to talk about, a goofy comedy dropping for the summer popcorn crowd.
No, the implications are much bigger than that.
Way bigger. We are going to use this moment and this specific franchise to explore the profound mechanics of parody.
Which is a seriously underappreciated art form.
It really is. So we are zeroing in on a massive provocation from the source material, which is the central focus of our whole conversation today. Specifically, how can a parody of film seemingly built entirely just for cheap laughs and slapstick actually elevate the entire horror genre it's making fun of?
It is a phenomenal question.
Yeah.
And it really challenges how we fundamentally view cinematic comedy.
Right, because usually we don't give it that kind of credit.
Exactly. We tend to view spoof movies as like the bottom of the cinematic food chain, just parasites feeding off better, more successful movies.
Yeah, just lazy cash grabs.
But the reality of what a successful parody accomplishes is so much more structurally complex than that.
So setting the stage here, think about the timeline we are working with from the source text. It has been 26 years since this specific brand of irreverent, hold-nothing-back horror humor first landed back in 1999.
26 years. I mean, the world is entirely different. Hollywood is entirely different.
Ghostface is back on our screens, but there's a crucial distinction made right up front in the coverage. Ghostface is not here to kill anyone with fear. That is not the objective.
Which completely flips the script on what that iconic character represents in the modern era.
Totally.
And to properly frame this for you listening, we really have to understand the high stakes of the current cinematic landscape. We are at a moment where horror cinema is arguably enjoying one of its strongest, most critically acclaimed runs in decades.
Yeah, horror is massive right now. It's prestige.
Exactly. Releasing a parody right now in this exact cultural climate is a massive gamble.
Why do you say that?
Because modern horror is an ecosystem that takes itself incredibly seriously. It's filled with prestige directors, high-concept narratives, intense psychological exploration.
Oh, and so many complex metaphors for trauma.
So many. So, dropping an irreverent spoof into this very serious, very self-important environment is an incredibly bold timing choice. It's like bringing a kazoo to a symphony orchestra.
Okay, I love that analogy. A kazoo at a symphony. Let's pull on that thread right from the jump.
Let's do it.
Because to really understand how this parody plans to tackle this prestige-heavy modern horror landscape, we need to look at the tone that the studios Paramount and Miramax set right out of the gate in this new trailer.
Yeah, the opening joke is very telling.
It's an absolute doozy. I'm going to read it exactly as it's quoted in the Movie Maniac breakdown. Quote, "The studio that brought you Scream asked the director of Get Out for a sequel. He said, nope. Right. And the source notes that if this doesn't make you smile, the movie probably isn't for you."
What's fascinating here is that there is so much packed into that one single, seemingly simple joke.
Oh, break that down for me.
Well, it is doing an incredible amount of heavy lifting in just 2 short sentences. What stands out to me is that this isn't a physical spoof.
Right. No one is getting hit with a frying pan.
Exactly. It's not someone falling down the stairs or getting hit in the head with the garage door. It is a highly targeted, razor-sharp critique of the Hollywood machine itself.
Yeah, it's super meta.
Very meta. By explicitly referencing real production companies, acknowledging a specific, highly acclaimed director without even needing to say Jordan Peele's name.
Right. They just say the director of Get Out.
And then using actual movie titles Scream, Get Out, and Nope as the literal punchline of the joke.
Yeah.
The film is immediately establishing a hyper-aware relationship with the audience.
Okay, let's unpack this because it goes right back to my haunted house analogy. It's the magician actively showing the audience exactly how the trapdoor trick works. They are pointing a spotlight at the hidden mirrors, looking the audience dead in the eye and saying, okay, you see how fake this industry is. Watch us do it anyway.
That is exactly what they're doing. It's incredibly brazen.
It really is. But I have to ask you, does breaking the fourth wall so aggressively right in the promotional material before the movie even starts, does that signal to the viewer that this parody aims to be an insider critique?
Oh, 100%.
Like, is it essentially putting up a warning sign that says, hey, this isn't just slapstick humor. You need to know how the sausage is made to get the jokes?
I think it absolutely acts as a filter. It tells you immediately that the target of the mockery isn't just the tropes on the screen.
Right, not just the final girl tripping over a root in the woods.
Or the car that magically won't start when the killer is walking towards it. The target is the entire industry apparatus that greenlights those tropes in the first place.
Wow, so it's aiming way higher.
It's making fun of the studio's endless desperation for sequels. You know, their attempts to cash in on the cachet of prestige horror directors.
And the incredibly predictable nature of industry negotiations.
Yes. Think about what it takes to actually understand that trailer joke. You need a baseline knowledge of industry news, box office trends, and directorial filmographies for it to even land.
Which brings up a really interesting point from the source text regarding exclusivity. The coverage explicitly states that if that studio negotiation joke doesn't make you smile, the movie probably isn't for you.
Which is a wild thing for a major blockbuster movie to just admit out loud.
Right. They are basically saying, hey, we are putting a velvet rope in front of our comedy. If your pop culture knowledge isn't on the list, you aren't getting in.
Yeah, it's very selective.
It makes me think about how parodies, at their absolute core, intensely reward the audience who is actually paying attention. Like you, the listener, you have to be deeply well-informed to even parse the joke.
It turns the comedy into a literal form of cultural literacy testing, doesn't it?
It really does. If you don't know that the director of Get Out also directed a movie literally called Nope, the punchline is completely meaningless to you.
It just sounds like a confusing, grammatically awkward sentence about a studio executive being rejected.
Exactly. He said, nope. Okay, so what?
But parody inherently requires a shared vocabulary. The more fluent you are in the source material, the richer and funnier the parody becomes.
Because you're in on the secret.
Right. It transforms the experience into an active viewing process. You aren't just sitting there passively receiving the story. Your brain is actively cross-referencing the jokes on screen against your own encyclopedic knowledge of cinema.
You are basically participating in the construction of the joke.
Exactly.
Okay, so knowing how they are setting the tone and mocking the industry is only half the puzzle. The real risk of a movie like this is WHO they are using to deliver the punchlines.
Yes, the casting is everything here.
And this is where the passage of time really becomes a character in itself. According to the breakdown, we've got the return of the original cast.
The heavy hitters.
Yeah. Marlon Wayans is back as Shorty, Sean Wayans as Ray, Anna Faris as Cindy, and Regina Hall as Brenda.
The legends.
The coverage affectionately dubs them the Core Four, who survived everything the previous chaotic films threw at them.
And their plot for this new iteration.
Well, this is the funny part. They are just trying to live normal, quiet lives after escaping their killer years ago.
And nestled right inside that seemingly basic plot description is a surprisingly profound observation from the text about modern cinema.
Oh, the quote about movies not letting you go.
Yes. The coverage notes that, quote, as expected, neither movies nor murderers ever really let you go.
Which is a great line.
It is. But what's fascinating here is that this isn't just a throwaway line to explain why the characters are back on screen.
No.
No. It is a razor-sharp commentary on the traumatized survivor trope that absolutely dominates modern legacy horror sequels today.
Oh, wow. You see it everywhere now.
Everywhere. Jamie Lee Curtis returning in the new Halloween films as this deeply traumatized survivor living in a fortified house. Neve Campbell returning over and over to scream.
Right. The characters are literally never allowed to just heal and move on.
Exactly. The franchise demands their continuous suffering for our entertainment.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back on this concept a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
There seems to be a massive, glaring contradiction here. These characters, the Core Four, are trying to move on. They want normal lives. But the movie, the literal studio machinery we were just talking about, is forcefully dragging them back into the exact same chaotic environment.
Well, yes, that's the premise.
So doesn't that just make the filmmakers total hypocrites?
How so?
Isn't forcing these specific actors back into these specific traumatized legacy roles the exact same kind of Hollywood exploitation the movie claims it wants to make fun of?
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Like, it feels like they are becoming the very thing they are mocking just so they can cash a check at the box office.
That is the exact debate surrounding legacy parodies right now. And it's a very thin tightrope to walk. You were absolutely right to point out the hypocrisy.
Thank you. It just feels so contradictory.
But we have to ask, is it hypocrisy or is it a Trojan horse?
A Trojan horse. Explain that.
The argument is that you cannot effectively mock a legacy sequel from the outside looking in. To expose how ridiculous the Hollywood machinery is, you have to operate from within it.
Okay, I'm listening.
By bringing back the actors 26 years later, placing them in the exact same peril, and making a joke out of their sheer inability to escape their past, the filmmakers are arguably having their cake and eating it too.
I don't know, man. It feels like cinematic whiplash. You can't just point at a cliche, actively perform the cliche, and then look at the audience and say, look how brilliant I am for noticing. That feels like a cheat code.
I hear you, but here's why it functions differently in a parody. In a straight horror legacy sequel, the filmmakers want you to genuinely believe in the tragedy of the character's returning trauma.
Right. They want you to feel sad for Jamie Lee Curtis's character.
Exactly. They want emotional investment. But in a parody, they are bringing the actors back specifically to point out how creatively bankrupt and abusive the studio system is for never letting these fictional people rest.
Oh, so the exploitation eyes the joke.
Yes. They are using the actor's physical aging over 26 years as the visual punchline to criticize Hollywood's refusal to invent new ideas.
Okay, I see what you were saying now. They are using the nostalgia as a weapon against the concept of nostalgia itself.
Precisely.
And that brings up the massive 26-year gap mentioned in the source material. The coverage explicitly wonders whether a 2025 audience is going to respond to the exact same brand of humor that landed so massively back in 1999.
Which is a very valid concern.
Because let's be honest, the cultural landscape of 1999 was a completely different universe.
It truly was. The sensibilities were different. The boundaries of what was considered acceptable comedy were completely different.
Everything has shifted.
And the source notes that while the Wayans have done it before, bringing 1999 comedic sensibilities into a 2025 landscape is undoubtedly the defining risk of the film.
It's the big tension surrounding the release.
The anxiety from critics isn't just about whether the jokes are funny on paper. It's about whether the actual style of joking still translates to modern viewers.
Right, because in 1999, the target was incredibly straightforward. Teen slashers.
Very easy targets. You had characters running up the stairs when they should obviously be running out the front door.
Or the oblivious local police who never believed the teenagers.
Exactly. It was easy to spoof because the rules were so rigid and silly. Today, the targets are vastly different, which requires a massive evolution in how the comedy actually operates.
So let's talk about that evolution, because to really answer the question of whether this works in 2025, we have to look at exactly what they're aiming at.
The hit list.
The hit list is out, and it is ambitious. The text names the specific targets: Sinners, Weapons, A Quiet Place, and the Scream franchise itself.
That is a heavy lineup.
But it doesn't stop at just cinematic targets. The source also notes that the social phenomenon of cancel culture is in the crosshairs, and the movie promises to cancel the phenomenon with its own brand of humor.
If we look closely at that list, we can really see the evolution of the genre we were just discussing.
Oh, so?
Walking the Scream franchise. That is familiar territory. That's a return to their 1999 roots.
Safe ground.
But aiming at targets like A Quiet Place, Sinners, and Weapons, that represents a fundamental shift in the comedic strategy. A Quiet Place, for instance, is the absolute poster child for what critics often call high-concept or elevated horror.
It really is. It's so serious.
Right. It doesn't rely on teenagers making dumb decisions. It relies almost entirely on silence, atmosphere, and sensory deprivation.
Yes. And this is what I find so fascinating mechanically. How do you even go about parodying silence?
It's a huge challenge.
It's so easy to parody a slasher villain walking slowly but somehow catching up to a victim who is sprinting. But it is infinitely harder to parody a high-concept sensory premise. Literally, how do you shoot a scene where the joke is the absence of sound?
You have to parody the deprivation itself.
Walk me through that.
You have to take the mechanic of the scare, the absolute life-or-death need for total silence, and you introduce the most mundane, human, uncontrollable interruptions to it.
Give me an example.
Okay, in a straight horror film like A Quiet Place, the tension is a character slowly, agonizingly placing a bare foot on a creaky wooden floorboard, terrified of making a sound.
Right, you're on the edge of your seat. So how does the parody flip that?
The parody, the character places their foot perfectly. They don't make a sound. They sigh in relief.
Okay.
And then they immediately step on a child's whoopee cushion that takes a full 30 seconds of agonizingly loud squeaking noises to deflate while the monster is standing right behind them.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. Just the agonizingly slow squeak.
Right. Or imagine a scenario where the characters are hiding from a sound-sensitive monster, and one of them just gets a tickle in their throat.
The worst timing possible.
They are desperately trying to hold in a sneeze, and their face is just contorting into these massive, absurd, rubbery shapes, while the other characters watch in sheer, helpless terror.
I love that so much. It's taking the self-serious nature of prestige horror and reminding it that people are fundamentally messy and noisy. Like, biology doesn't care about your elevated horror concept.
Exactly. You take the strict rules of the elevated horror world, and you force the characters to navigate them with the clumsy, unpredictable reality of the human body.
It reminds me of a comedy roast, actually.
A roast? How so?
Think about the rules of a roast. You only roast the celebrities or the franchises that are currently at the absolute top of the cultural zeitgeist.
Oh, that's true.
You don't roast the failures, you roast the undeniable successes. Because making fun of a flop is just mean. Making fun of a massive hit is punching up.
That's a great point. They are targeting the titans of the modern box office.
Right. But looking at this list, this is what really catches my eye, and I want your take on this. How does a broad social phenomenon like cancel culture fit onto a hit list right next to movie monsters.
It's an interesting pivot, isn't it?
It feels like one of these things is not like the other. You've got aliens, serial killers, and societal boycotts.
It is a vital inclusion, though, and I think it speaks to how broad the scope of their commentary really is. We have to look at how the source text frames it.
Which is how?
The coverage frames cancel culture as a societal phenomenon to be targeted with humor. It's treating it not as a political debate, but as an anxiety, a modern fear.
A fear of public shaming, basically.
Exactly. In a meta sense, taking on a modern social anxiety right alongside cinematic movie monsters suggests that the parody views both of them through the exact same lens.
Oh, wow.
Right. Societal fears of public shaming and cinematic fears of a monster in the woods are presented as equally pervasive in our daily lives, and therefore, they are equally worthy of being disarmed and deflated through laughter.
That is profound. It's basically leveling the playing field of fear.
Exactly.
Whether it's a literal monster hiding under your bed or the existential anxiety of a massive social phenomenon, the movie looks at both of them and says, we can take the air out of that balloon.
We can make you laugh at the thing that keeps you up at night.
And that concept, the idea of systematically disarming fear, brings us to the absolute core focus of our deep dive today.
This is the main event.
This is what we really want to spend time exploring for the listener. Based on the source material, this is the overarching philosophical claim about how parodies elevate the horror genre.
This is the thesis statement of the entire endeavor, really. The idea that a spoof isn't a degradation of horror, but an elevation of it.
Exactly. Let me reiterate the stakes as they are laid out in the text for this June 12th release. The commentary states, quote, "Parodying it now is a bold move. Either you elevate the genre through mockery or you end up as the bad joke."
Elevating the genre through mockery. It's such a powerful phrase.
And the text concludes with this massive, seemingly contradictory question. Can a parody be, paradoxically, the most honest horror film of the year?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the idea that mockery can act as an engine for elevation is incredibly profound.
Break that down. How does mockery elevate anything?
Let's think about that strong run of horror we discussed earlier. When any genre becomes highly successful and culturally dominant, it inherently gets comfortable.
It rests on its laurels.
Right. It starts to rely on established shorthand. It builds a set of tropes that it knows will elicit a reaction from the audience, and filmmakers start using those tropes as crutches instead of doing the hard work of building genuine terror.
Oh, right, like the jump scare chord in the music or the mirror cabinet in the bathroom closing to reveal someone standing there. We've seen it a million times.
Exactly. By aggressively pointing out those exact tropes, highlighting the cliches and magnifying the absurdities of that successful run, a parody acts as a necessary cultural pressure valve.
Okay, so what does this all mean mechanically? I want to dig really deep into this pressure valve concept. Walk me through exactly how making a joke about a mirror scare actually improves the horror genre as a whole.
Let's use the mirror scare as the perfect example. For years, horror movies use the medicine cabinet gag.
Classic.
A character washes their face, opens the mirrored cabinet, grabs a pill, closes it, and boom, the killer is reflected, standing right behind them, accompanied by a loud musical sting.
Gets you every time. Well, the first time.
Right. It worked brilliantly the first 10 times we saw it, but then it became lazy. Now imagine a brilliantly executed parody takes aim at that trope.
Okay, set the scene.
The character washes their face, opens the cabinet, and closes it. But instead of the killer being behind them, the killer is somehow inside the tiny medicine cabinet.
Oh my gosh, just shoved in there between the toothpaste and the aspirin.
Yes. Or alternatively, the character just keeps opening and closing the cabinet rapidly like a strobe light, and the killer keeps appearing and disappearing in different, increasingly frustrated poses.
Okay, that's genuinely funny.
Right. But here's the critical part. Once a parody has done that, once it has thoroughly exposed the underlying mechanics of the medicine cabinet scare and made the audience laugh at how predictable it is, it becomes incredibly difficult for a straight horror film to ever use that trope again with a straight face.
Oh, wow. Because the audience is already conditioned to laugh at it now.
Yes. The parody has permanently infected the trope. If a serious horror director tries to use the medicine cabinet scare the next year, the audience isn't going to scream. They're going to think of the spoof movie, and they are going to chuckle.
So the parody actively destroys the old tools.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Therefore, by mocking the genre, the parody is actually forcing the genre to evolve.
It burns down the lazy tropes so that new ideas can grow.
It forces horror writers and directors to be better. They have to abandon their lazy crutches and invent entirely new ways to scare us because the old ways have been thoroughly exposed, dissected, and laughed at.
In that very real, tangible way, the mockery is an act of elevation.
It raises the bar for the entire cinematic ecosystem. It demands better art.
That makes so much sense. It clears the brush. So how does that tie into the concept of honesty?
What do you mean?
Well, the question in the text was whether a parody can be the most honest horror film. I was trying to wrap my head around this, and I want to see if this tracks with you.
Let's hear it.
And does it come down to the fact that a straight horror movie is fundamentally built on a lie, whereas a parody is telling the truth about what you are watching?
Keep going with that.
Yeah.
How is a horror movie lying?
Well, a straight horror film has to actively lie to you from the opening credits to the end. It spends 2 solid hours begging you to pretend that the situation on screen is real.
Right. Suspension of disbelief.
It needs you to believe that the monster in the shadows is an actual threat, that the blood on the floor isn't just corn syrup and red dye, and that the stakes are literal life and death for these actors.
It demands a complete, unbroken suspension of reality.
Exactly. If you stop believing the lie for even a second, the movie fails. But a parody...
A parody admits the lie.
Right. A parody might be honest because it is the only type of film that looks you dead in the eye and admits what it is.
It points at the seams.
It admits that you are sitting in a theater watching a highly constructed, ridiculous, artificial manipulation of your emotions. It doesn't lie to you about the machinery. It shows you the machinery and says, isn't it weird that we all pay money to be manipulated like this?
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The parody strips away the pretense. And this highlights a deeply symbiotic relationship between horror and comedy that is so often overlooked by critics.
A symbiotic relationship.
Yes. People think they are opposite genres, but if you break down the physical wiring of our brains, horror and comedy rely on the exact same structural architecture.
Wait, really? They share the same DNA? Walk me through that. How is a scare the exact same as a joke?
Think about the mechanics of building tension. Both a scare and a joke rely entirely on 3 phases. A meticulous setup, the building of intense tension, and a sudden, physical, involuntary release from the audience.
Okay, let's walk through a horror setup first.
You have a quiet house. A character is alone. They hear a noise downstairs. That's the setup.
Classic.
They slowly walk down the stairs. The music drops out. The camera pushes in tight on their face. That is the building of tension. The audience is holding their breath.
You can hear a pin drop in the theater.
Then, the cat jumps out of the closet. The tension is broken. The physical, involuntary release from the audience is a scream or a gasp, followed by a sigh of relief.
Right. It's a completely physical reaction. You can't control it.
Now, parallel that with a comedy punchline.
Okay.
The setup. A guy walks into a bar with a duck on his head.
Right.
The tension.
Yeah.
The bartender asks a question, and there's a pregnant pause, while the audience waits to see how the absurdity will be resolved.
It's the anticipation.
The punchline is delivered. The tension is broken.
Yep.
And the physical, involuntary release from the audience is a laugh.
Oh my gosh. The architecture is identical.
It is. The only difference is the specific frequency of the emotional release at the end. A scream versus a laugh.
That is incredible. They really are just 2 sides of the exact same coin.
They are. And therefore, a masterful parody doesn't destroy the horror genre. It honors it.
By reverse engineering it.
Exactly. It studies the mechanics of horror so intimately and respects the architecture so much that it can reverse engineer those mechanics to elicit a completely different biological response.
It takes the exact same setup that was meticulously designed for a scream, and it slightly twists the timing.
Maybe extending the pause just a second too long or undercutting the dramatic music with a weird sound effect, and it produces a laugh instead.
So you really have to know your stuff.
You simply cannot successfully parody something you don't deeply structurally understand. You have to be a master of horror to make a good horror parody.
That completely changes the paradigm for me. It takes this idea of an irreverent, goofy spoof and recontextualizes it as a masterclass in genre mechanics.
It's not just a bunch of actors goofing off with props.
No, it's an architectural deconstruction of cinema itself.
And that deconstruction is what ultimately elevates the host genre, exactly as the source material suggested.
It cleans out the cobwebs.
It reminds the audience of the rules of the game. And ironically, that makes the next genuine scare in a future serious horror movie that much more impactful.
Because that serious movie had to work infinitely harder to bypass the cynicism and the awareness that the parody instilled in us.
Exactly. The parody makes horror stronger by constantly testing its defenses.
I feel like I need to watch every spoof movie ever made with a completely new set of eyes now.
It really changes how you watch them.
It does. Well, let's do a quick recap of the journey we've taken today, because we've covered a massive amount of ground from what seemed like a simple trailer announcement.
We really have.
For you listening, we started by looking at the ingenious, hyper-aware meta-marketing of that opening studio negotiation joke, proving that this film is actively testing our cultural literacy right out of the gate.
And establishing that velvet rope.
Right. Then we explored the nostalgic and admittedly slightly contradictory return of the core four Marlin, Sean, Anna, and Regina.
And debated how their mere presence is a commentary on the modern obsession with traumatized legacy survivors.
Which was such a fascinating angle. Then we broke down their ambitious modern hit list, tackling exactly how you go about parodying the sensory deprivation of prestige horror.
The squeaky whoopee cushion in A Quiet Place.
Still laughing at that. And we discussed how addressing the social anxieties of modern phenomena places societal fears on the exact same level as movie monsters.
Leveling the playing field of fear.
And finally, we arrived at this profound, really beautiful realization.
The focus of our deep dive.
Yes, that mocking a genre, actively pointing at its flaws, tearing down its lazy tropes, and laughing at its mechanics, might actually be the greatest act of love, honesty, and elevation a filmmaker can offer the horror genre.
It completely reframes how we should view this June 12th release.
It really does. It's no longer just a summer comedy. It's a critical response to a dominant cultural movement.
It's a vital part of the horror ecosystem.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to hand it over to you for one final thought. Based on everything we've pulled from the coverage and the concepts we've explored today, what is a final provocative thought the listener can take away and mull over on their own?
I want to circle back to a specific piece of phrasing from the coverage combined with the overall title of the piece.
Okay.
The text stated that neither movies nor murderers ever really let you go, and the title declared that this was the parody everyone needed.
Right.
So here is the thought I want to leave you with. If the horror genre is, at its absolute core, a dark mirror reflecting our deepest cultural anxiety.
Yes, it is.
And parody is the tool we use to laugh at those exact same fears, to systematically strip them of their power.
Yeah.
What does it say about the state of the world in 2025 that we didn't just want, but desperately needed the return of this specific 26-year-old brand of irreverent humor?
Wow.
Are we, as a culture, finally exhausted by being constantly relentlessly scared?
That is a great question.
And are we realizing that sometimes the absolute only way to survive the monsters in the dark, whether they are on a movie screen or lurking in an elaborate haunted house, is to finally turn on the lights, point right at them, and laugh?